Hi, and welcome to Rec Chat, where students and professionals talk about all things in collegiate recreation. I'm your host, Max Miller from Swarthmore College, where I'm the Assistant Director of Athletics for Recreation and Wellness. Thanks for joining us today, either live or via our archived YouTube channel. Joining me behind the scenes is Rochelle Williams from Western Washington University, where she is the Aquatics and Youth Programs Coordinator. Together, we're the Rec Chat team. We're very excited to have members from the NIRSA Championship Series with us today. For those following on Twitter, we'll be asking questions using the Rec Chat handle regarding the series, so feel free to participate. Before we introduce our panelists, we want to thank our friends at NIRSA HQ for all of their support. If you haven't already, follow them on Twitter at NIRSA Live and at NIRSA Champ. So without further ado, I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. Tell us your name, your position, your institution, and a little bit about your involvement with the championship series. Randall, you'll start us off.
Hi, thanks. I'm Randall Ford. My current position is Associate Director of Sport Clubs here at the University of Texas at Austin. My current involvement with the Champ Series is I serve as the chair of the executive team, so overseeing all of Champ Series events.
Flick, you're next.
Hi, my name is Scott Flickinger. My current position is sitting facing forward. I'm also the Director of Intramural Sports, the Building Director of the Noyes Community Recreation Center, Cornell University, and at the NIRSA Championship Series, I serve as the Vice Chair on the executive team.
Mark.
Mark Williams, Director of Rec Sports, University of Notre Dame, and currently I'm the President of the National Service Corporation, also known as the NSC Board.
And then Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Dummel, and I'm the Assistant Director for Intramural Sports at the University of Oregon. My involvement with the series, I currently serve on the NIRSA Task Force, which I'm very happy to be a part of. I've also traveled to flag football tournaments, national soccer. We've hosted regional basketball a couple times here at Oregon, as well as sending teams and supporting the series.
Great. Thank you all very much. So we'll get into question one here. So what was the main focus of the Series 2.0 task force?
Max, is that me? This is Rand. I'll take that one. The main focus was after the series came into being in 2006, so about a 12-year period where we got the series going and started, established some processes, some work teams, some policies and procedures. It was time to take a look at that series and spend some time talking about what the next several years might look like. So how do we move the series forward? How do we tweak it? We know it's working pretty well, but what can we do now? What's important to look at to help the series be more successful in the future?
So this is Scott from Cornell. To follow up with that, what we're really taking a look at too is how we're going to move this forward into the future. So the championship series has been going on for quite some time, and looking at a lot of what we've accomplished, accomplished a ton since 2006. So right now, after 12 years, we really took a good look at what the NIRSA Championship Series is about and what we need to do to kind of move it forward. So in the beginning, we were looking at how do we make this successful and make this a part of NIRSA. And from then on, we've done a lot. We've established a lot of great tournaments, great regionals, great programs. And now that we've kind of reached that point, that 12-year point, we're like, okay, well, we've accomplished a lot. What's our future look like? So we really took a look at a lot of the, in part with the new, with the new items that NIRSA has unveiled. We were taking a look at aligning ourselves with NIRSA and making sure that we continue this success in alignment with the NIRSA values that have just been presented for this past year.
Great. Definitely very important to stay aligned with the strategic plan for NIRSA. And those great values for those at home. Not a bad idea to just keep them posted up in your office always keep them in mind when you're working on a daily basis. So moving on, so communication is always a challenge. We want to make sure that we are getting better with that. So what is the series doing to ensure that important decisions related to the NIRSA Championship Event Administration are communicated to all key stakeholders effectively?
So I'll go ahead and touch on that. So I think what's really special about this series, and especially the leadership, is it's very much like a shared leadership model. It's not just a board making decisions and then it's trickling down. They really value and try to solicit the feedback from all of the stakeholders that are involved, from the volunteers, the career staff that are supporting the tournaments, the fans, the parents, and most importantly, the participants. So there's various methods that they're doing outreach. That's why the assessment team is so very important, and we really encourage participants and those that are involved to actually fill out those surveys, give feedback, even if you don't want to do the formal survey, send emails, notes, whatever you can, because that's how the decisions are made, which is really special. I think like people are a part of the decision making, as well as there's work team chairs that are consulted, the work team members themselves. Again, I don't sit on any of the official boards, and I still feel like I get to be very much a part of it because they're soliciting feedback and comments and suggestions, and you see those reflected in the decisions that are being made. So as a member, it makes me feel like my opinions and perspectives are really valued. And a lot of times I am the voice for my students. So really, it's not just what I think, it's what they think, which is really important. So again, the assessment team, I cannot stress that as much as we're so appreciative for the work that they do and really encouraging people to take advantage of those tools. That's why they're created. And then using that to make decisions, and then not even making a decision, but collecting that and then saying, here's what we're thinking about doing, and then collecting more feedback. So there's many layers to the decision-making process and many voices that get to be incorporated into that. And so I think that's something that is unique to the series, and in one of probably the most valuable aspects I think that we offer that other, I think, entities don't, as well as all the other ways you can think of as conferences and those type of things where we're trying to educate people, get more voices involve diverse perspectives. So there's a lot that is happening. So those that are saying, oh, I don't hear anything, sometimes we'll encourage you to use the resources that we're trying to give you through email or phone calls or conferences and help you get connected, because they're definitely making a lot of effort to try to bring as many people as possible into the decision-making process and then communicate out to the stakeholders how and why things are being changed.
And I wasn't directly involved in this effort. I didn't get to call any of the stakeholders, but I do know that several members of the series task force contacted stakeholders in order to gather data, run ideas by them, and then to kind of unveil the finished document. So everything was very purposeful in regards to making sure that it was a transparent process. And again, to make as many people that are involved in this, who care about it, to give them a voice.
Something I'd like to follow up on too on that. So a lot of communication that we do with our other stakeholders in terms of institutions, parents, fans of the championship series, as well as we use a lot of social media out there. A great example is this past weekend or last week, we used Twitter and we used Instagram to put pictures out and to give updates on how the national soccer tournament went. Lots of score updates, just getting a lot of that information out there. If you have been following along, you may have noticed that we had a little bit of rain out at Foley, Alabama. So there were a lot of updates that were going on there. And granted, sometimes we have to be deliberate in waiting to make sure that we are making the correct decisions. But as soon as those decisions are made, that is what's sent out to our stakeholders in terms of teams, and in terms of participants, and in terms of institutions. So they know what's going on. And we've been following up too as well with the results of what happened this past weekend. And we're making sure that people see that we're trying to do what's best, or keep the best interests of our participants in mind whenever we're working in the championship series. So we're following up with teams that may have had some additional games left over, but were postponed due to the weather. And we're doing our best to, like I said, do right by those teams and make sure that we follow through into fruition with that.
Thank you all. So we want to always improve the experience of the participants at these regional and national events. So what strategies is the series using to improve the experience for our participants, specifically students, and even coaches and referees?
I'll start with that one too. So a lot of what we look at is assessment. So we're sending out surveys, we're recording information from our participants, our officials, our volunteers, and really taking a hard look at what their suggestions are and what they've enjoyed and not so much enjoyed from the championship series. So we take a good hard look at that information that we get. And like I said, they come in the form of surveys. They can be qualitative, they can be quantitative. But overall, we're looking at what they're saying. And if we see a trend, if we see multiple answers from multiple teams or from multiple participants, staff members, officials, then we take a good hard look at that and say, what can we do to improve this situation? Especially with our participants. We know that without our participants, we don't have a championship series. So we really take a look at what the participants have to say, and we take to heart suggestions that they bring to us. Some of them are extremely viable, and we say, yeah, we can absolutely do that. Sometimes they're a little bit out of that realm, so we try and reach out and say, what else can we do? These options aren't viable, these options aren't sustainable. What else can we do to improve this and maybe meet you halfway with that? So I think our biggest thing, or the biggest thing we use, is we use a lot of assessment, and we get that qualitative and quantitative information from our participants as well as our volunteers and officials, and use that to try and improve the overall enjoyment of the championship series.
Good. I'll also speak to that next. I definitely agree with everything that Scott said, so I won't spend time basically repeating that. The assessment piece, as I've already mentioned, is so important, and we do make a lot of decisions based off of that information. Some of the other strategies is making sure that our personnel that are in positions to make the most impact are well educated. They understand the industry, they understand the trends. I mean, we're bringing really quality experiences to the students because our staff and our volunteers are educated. You know, we're providing the best facilities, safety standards, officiating at a high quality, incorporating technology, which is rapidly changing day to day. So broadcasting games, tweeting live updates, all of those sorts of things come from also participants saying they want it, but also us just having the knowledge of industry standards, best practices, and how we can continue to maintain this really high standard of quality for our participants.
Awesome. Now look into a different aspect of the series. So Randall and Mark, where is the series on working on getting some event sponsorships?
Well, I think, Max, you've asked one of the million-dollar questions that a lot of our key stakeholders and have asked us about over the past couple of years. At a 30,000-foot level, the Champ Series reports up through the NSC board that Mark mentioned earlier, and NIRSA's marketing partner, Riddle and Bloom, right now is responsible for going out and seeking kind of those global sponsorships, if you will, those big sponsorships for the series. We have, I sit on the services board monthly phone calls, and the Champ Series executive team certainly gets to provide input if there are potential sponsors that are out there. We don't have any right now that are, I would say, that are close. Riddle and Bloom continues to try to obviously to search the market for a good sponsor for us. At the regional level, I think many of the tournaments certainly grab local sponsorships and things like that. A lot of our campuses have relationships with local businesses and things like that they go after. But as far as at a big level, the NSC board and Riddle and Bloom, I think, are actively out there working for us, but don't have anything in the hopper right now.
And I would just add to what Randall said. Again, the NSC board's working with Riddle and Bloom. We're just trying to seek out interested companies whose brand and I guess their mission are compatible with NIRSA's. It's extremely challenging trying to find, I guess, the right sponsor who has funds and who wants to partner with us. And just to take the time, I guess it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort and expertise to do that. We know that the series is great, but I think it's challenging sometimes to tell someone it's a bottom line kind of business for them, where they're expecting maybe tangible people to buy so much of their product, where our product, sometimes it's not, you can't see it. It's the development of the participants, it's the development of the students and of the staff. So again, similar to what Randall said, we're trying to work with Riddle and Bloom and give them information and kind of create that kind of integrated partnership where they know when they go to see someone, a company, or talk to someone, they can speak the NIRSA language and they can kind of sell us as best as they can. But we're in the process, again, of trying to find sponsors to kind of help with the cost for the series events.
Great. So specific with our club sports, national governing bodies are always an important thing to keep in touch with and to form partnerships with. So how does the series work more closely with some of these national governing bodies to form partnerships to make the events better, and also to create a better experience for our participants?
So I'll speak to soliciting and finding new partnerships, and just being clear that we're always open to adding new events and new sports, and just being explicit that the students are always our number one priority. And that's why sometimes when others recommend, oh, wouldn't it be simple, let's just partner with them and do a tournament, oftentimes is a little bit more challenging than people realize, because NIRSA puts the students number one, and staying aligned with those NIRSA values is really, really important to us. And sometimes some of the NGBs are less concerned maybe with some of the things that we find to be really important, like academic schedules and traveling and rankings and safety, price being oftentimes high on the list for whether students can or cannot participate. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that we are trying our best to expand and provide, again, a high quality of experiences and leagues and tournaments. But often, sometimes other entities, especially maybe more corporate, sometimes are just looking at turning a profit, not always, but sometimes. And so those are the conversations that we need to have to make sure that they're in line with our values and that our students are really having the best experience that they can. For example, we proctor tests at tournaments and are aware of, breaks and schedules and finals weeks, and sometimes other people aren't. They're like, this is when our venue's available, this is when we're running the tournament, and that doesn't necessarily work out for the club and intramural team. So students are our number one priority, and that factors in greatly to the partnerships that we cultivate.
I also think that some of the obvious areas related to how we go work with the NGBs are relate to risk management and safety of the participants. Probably concussion management is something we both share. And then eligibility and participation requirements, I think, are some of the other areas that we can relate to them a little bit more so. But I agree a lot with what Amanda was saying, just that we are always going to look at the participants first and their care overall. And I think the idea of proctoring the test is a great thing that we've added since I've been involved.
Yeah, I think also the NGBs, I won't repeat what Amanda said because I agree with everything she did say about it. But the NGBs sometimes aren't focused on the college student. They want to partner with us, and sometimes their goals just don't align with NIRSA's goals. And a lot of the things that they're doing is financially driven at times, and we want to try to keep the experience great for our participants and also keep the costs as low as possible. If that's the feedback we certainly constantly get from our stakeholders, great experiences and keep the cost manageable. And I don't think at certain times the NGBs really align with us very well on those two things.
Yeah, making sure that we're advocating for our stakeholders, specifically those students who are paying their way to get to our events, is incredibly important. And I appreciate, and on behalf of probably all the students, all of your work to make sure that you're looking out for them. So going specifically towards soccer, why does the series use non-student officials or non-intramural officials for soccer tournaments compared to for flag football or for basketball that intramural officials who are deemed all tournament or all American are used?
I haven't really been involved with the soccer tournament. I've been to one throughout my whole career. So I'm going to give just my two thoughts. But I think Amanda, and I know Randall, Mr. Soccer, NIRSA Soccer will be able to help out with that. I think it's standardized rules, and then just the level of play dictates that. I think that across campus, we kind of augment and modify our rules a little, but I think that the quality of play dictates that we do play a standardized set of rules, and with that, all the officials will be trained the same way, or they've already been certified. Now, that's a guess. Hopefully, Randall and Amanda can help me with that.
So that's right, Mark, what you were saying. I think the culture of soccer is just very different than basketball and flag football, where it's only club teams, where at flag football and basketball tournaments, you'll see a mixture of club and intramural. So the expectation of soccer is much higher. Often these teams, probably I would say close to all, are paying higher fees to participate. They have a higher expectation of the quality of services that they're getting, and that's not to dismiss the experience that intramural level officials can bring, because some are very, very talented and they go on to be these high school, college, often professional officials. So I think that's something that we're hoping to move towards. But I think based on what I know and what Randall has shared with me, that is the root. Is it's been purely club, and so it's just a different culture. However, to be more inclusive and open up those opportunities to those intramural officials who are interested, I think strides are being made to do mentorship programs. And Randall was just sharing me with what they did just last weekend at Foley, and starting to bring in some of those folks that are interested, as well as even career staff. So there isn't as much of a professional following of soccer knowledge as there is also for flag football and basketball. So that contributes, I think, to the culture as well. So that's something that we're aware of, that we're making strides to change, like I said, in small ways, and then hopefully adding that element, because the experiential learning on both the professional side and the student official side has so much potential without it making such a significant impact when we're not ready to make that switch. So we could say next year it's all student officials. I think we'd get a lot of backlash, and that's not something I think that we're ready to just flip the switch on. But hopefully over time, integrating these mentorship programs and somehow making a smooth transition, because students can definitely benefit from that, as well as the professional staff and the club teams. So keeping, again, as I've said, I think 3 times, high quality of standard is always kind of at the forefront of our decision making. And Randall can share much more, I'm sure.
Well, I think it starts with some historical perspective. Back in the mid 90s, when soccer started, we were competing with other tournaments and we were trying to draw quality teams. And at that point, at least in my opinion, NIRSA didn't have really a base of soccer officials or NIRSA professionals that were highly involved with soccer. And so the club teams wanted a certain level of certification on officials. NISOA is a certification that we still use today. And so soccer started there and has just continued to evolve from there. As both Amanda and Mark said, the competition level is fairly high. Not that it's not high at our extramural events, because I think it is. And we have started to integrate student mentorship programs at our events, and also getting NIRSA professionals NISOA certified so they can then work the event. So our goal eventually would be to have more NIRSA professionals working, as well as possibly, if our student officials are a high enough quality, you can get that certification, more than happy to get those student officials involved at the tournament.
And I know a real cool highlight from this past NIRSA National Championship for Soccer, 2, if not 2 current NIRSA professionals were officiating at the event, and definitely one past NIRSA professional was officiating at the event. It was great. And then 2 current NIRSA professionals were working as the directors of officials. They are both NISOA officials, so they were able to bring a unique perspective and help with evaluation of officials, create a mentor program with the current officials who were there. And then something really cool this past spring, Region 3 hosted a 7v7 spring soccer tournament where they had student officials and created that sort of development program for those officials to gain different skills, brought in mentors who are from NISOA to help develop them into stronger officials for the intramural programs and give them a taste of what is out there for them to look into more of a professional way within the sport of soccer.
Definitely, and all the credit for a lot of what you just mentioned goes to the soccer work team and Laura Thomas as the chair. She has worked really hard to push that student initiative forward, and now we're seeing some of the output from that.
So we all work on college campuses. Students are complaining about the different forms they have to complete to participate in group exercise, club sports, intramural sports, even the general facility waivers to participate in formal recreation. So what are some things that the series is doing to help, I guess, work with the participants to move more electronic with the forms to make it a smoother transition, a smoother process?
I'll start with this one. So there are some things right now we're taking a look at. And there's, for example, we use IM Leagues, which helps with streamlining in terms of scheduling teams, getting information out to teams for when they play, those kind of things that IM Leagues provide. So we're kind of on the way, but there are some forms too that we're looking at that may take a little bit of time. And the reason why it takes a little bit of time is we're looking at our standards in terms of eligibility, and we want to make sure that the individuals that play on these teams fit our eligibility. And sometimes we need those standardized forms from institutions to ensure that the individuals that are playing within the championship series are indeed part of that institution and fit the description of the eligibility terms that the championship series has put forth. So we're taking a look at things like that, and we're seeing if that's something that can be streamlined and put online. I understand that there's a lot of those things, like you had mentioned, Max, that a lot of our participants at our own institutions are like, this is way too much. And the reason why we do those things is because we want to make sure all of our I's are dotted and all of our T's are crossed, and we make sure that everything is in the right place so that we can have these types of programs. And it's very similar to what the championship series is doing as well. So that's not to say, though, that we're not taking a look at that. So if there's a way for us, for example, to ensure that institutions can tell us that all the participants in a regional or a national championship are eligible individuals in terms of full-time students, and they can do that electronically and have us say, that fits our mold, we are certainly willing to entertain that. So we are taking a look at things like that and seeing if that's also a possibility. So we understand that there's lots of forms, there's lots of things that we need in, but the reason we have those right now is because until we can figure out a way to do that online and to do it safely so that information, so that sensitive information is not leaked or anything like that, we have to kind of go through all these forms, these paper forms, to make sure that people are eligible to play.
Right, and I don't have a ton of follow-up, Scott. You did a great job kind of explaining where we're at with the process. And again, we hear people, we're always looking to try to make things as accessible and efficient as possible. And just reiterating that it's just necessary. It's required for us to be able to do these events and do them safely and do them fairly. Again, and do them right. We have to collect this information. Sometimes it even depends on the host. Different states, different schools have their own restrictions sometimes on how they collect information and how that is stored. And I think often sometimes that's not something that students are aware of. So we're not just trying to make things complicated and be time consuming. We try the best we can to get what we need in the most effective way. And online is the future, and hopefully soon everything will be that way. So we hear you, we're working on it. A lot of these positions, well, all these positions are volunteer. So it's just getting the resources, particularly the human resources, to really have the time to take a look at this stuff and choose what the adequate software and methods will be. So it's in the works and hopefully coming soon to make it as easy as possible. So again, we welcome the feedback and suggestions if people have any, but really just stating that these things are necessary for us to be able to do what we're doing.
And I think that's something very important to highlight, is that everybody here today, it's all for, we're all volunteers working outside of our day-to-day work at our institutions to make the experience for our participants better, because we care about NIRSA and we want to all be leaders in collegiate recreation. So, I mean, in a few weeks, I believe that applications will open up to be a part of different work teams or committees within NIRSA. So definitely look out for that. Check the NIRSA Know, as well as the NIRSA website and NIRSA Twitter, to see when that stuff is opening up. So moving on to a sport that a lot of us love is flag football. But over the last few years, we've noticed a decline in some flag football team numbers. What's the series doing to address this trend and hopefully bring team numbers back up?
Well, Max, again, you've identified the other, I think, million-dollar question out there. We've seen it, the decline, at least on our campus, and a lot of my colleagues have seen the same. It's affected our regional tournaments. I believe certainly Region 3 has struggled with making a regional tournament go. And at one point in my career, I considered myself a flag football expert, but no more do I consider myself that. So me personally, I don't, there are certain theories out there. Is flag football declining because of the sport of football in general? Has football gotten a bad name, or concussions and things like that causing a decline and people not playing flag football? I don't know. I'd say that flag football leagues are probably on the rise because of that. So that can't be the reason that we're not seeing the transition to college. But we have done this on the Champ Series. I know that Flick's involved with this, but we have put together what we're calling a flag football think tank of work team chair Gerard Davis at Ohio State and flag football stakeholders around the country to come up with some recommendations and some theories and answers as to why we're seeing this decline in flag football.
And I would just add to what Randall said, that I think by providing a quality experience at all the events that we have is one way. I also think that what Randall said really makes a lot of sense, that flag football has become a bad word, or football in general, I guess I'd say, because of concussions. And I think it's going to make a comeback. It being one of the major sports in America, I think once people get over whatever issues are with concussions and those injuries, that it's going to happen. It's going to come back and be, it may never ever be from the days of old in New Orleans where there were 200 or 300 teams competing, but to the point where there'll be a little bit more so on campus. I think co-rec is really going to be something, because I think that the students now really like to compete and play with each other, and not necessarily just in one gender type of league. But I think that the think tank is a marvelous idea to talk about it and see who's very successful on their campus and who is struggling, and just how we can, as an association and as a series, kind of figure out how we can, revitalize it again. Because again, I tell people all the time, if it wasn't for football, who knows what I would be doing? I'd probably be trying to break into somebody's house tonight, but that's another story.
Also, too, something to think about with flag football. While we can control what we can control, there's a lot of factors, too, that we look at that are not necessarily in our control. Some things that I've noticed is sometimes geographically, the weather tends to lend itself to flag football. Some other places, it's not. So it may not be popular there as well. So we have to ask questions like, in some of those geographical locations, how can we entice people to get participating into flag football? Another example is maybe flag football has not been as big of a part of a physical education component in high schools and intramurals within high schools or middle schools or pre-secondary schooling as it was in the past. So maybe some people are not familiar that flag football is out there and that it's actually something that they can participate in. Just a shout out quickly to the the editorial board for the National Flag Football Rulebook. In the past few years, they've also done an excellent job simplifying the rules to make it more campus friendly so that teams can participate and not have to worry about, well, what are all these rules? What can I do? What can't I do? Examples: minimum amounts of team members that can sign in order for them to participate in the game. Minimal, instead of having a minimum amount on the line, the only person on the line that once the ball snapped has to be the center. So getting some simplicity into the rules as well is going to help us out as well. But we're going to have to take a look at some outside factors too that will that the think tank is going to have to look at and say, what are some things that are outside of our control and what can we do to maybe minimize that?
And I guess, Max, I would also challenge my NIRSA colleagues in those regions that we've seen some declines and for regional tournaments and even across campuses I would ask them, what are you doing to promote flag football? I think we've sat around maybe on our laurels way too long, expecting, a lot of teams to sign up. And when, a school approaches the series about hosting a regional, we depend on support from that region to basically go out and get those teams fired up and interested in coming to a regional. And if that's not happening and we're just putting out a flyer and thinking they'll come, clearly that has changed, and we need to engage those participants in some other way to motivate them to come to these tournaments and to play on our own campuses.
Absolutely. Doing that grassroots effort to make sure that we're getting the right amount of teams we need to participate. And even on our own intramural leagues, making sure that we're getting out there and word of mouth and getting people interested and knowledgeable of what's going on is very important. Something cool that just started over the summer, I think, is the American Flag Football League, where former NFL players who have hung up the cleats on and hung up their shoulder pads, I guess, are now putting on their flag belts and participating in the competitive flag football league. So that hopefully could drum up some interest on our college campuses or even at high schools. And then when students do come to campus, making sure that they're knowledgeable of what's going on and what opportunities are there for them.
Definitely, Max. I think the AFFL is something new to us, and I know they've approached NIRSA and the NSC board about a potential partnership, and there's been some initial discussions about what we can or what we would want to do. Those are in the very early stages at this point, but yeah, I think many of us have been contacted or have seen the AFFL information out there, which could be very exciting. It could be another opportunity for our students and our clubs.
That's awesome. So rounding it out with our last question here, are there any new sports on the horizon for this series? Maybe esports? Any thoughts would be great to share of what's on the future.
Did somebody say esports?
I said esports.
Wow. So one thing that we are looking at, there is a national committee right now taking a look at the viability of esports and how if NIRSA should take a look at involvement with esports and what the benefits are for NIRSA in terms of esports. Right now, esports, we definitely have an interest in esports. There are a lot of factors out there right now in terms of sponsorship, how it aligns with our values and the NIRSA strategic values as well. If it's feasible in terms of getting it onto campuses, where we would have this. There's a number of things that are going on right now. But esports is on our radar, and it is something that we are taking a look at in terms of, is this something that the NIRSA Championship Series can invest in? And if we do invest in it, what's going to be the outcomes for us? And is this going to be a benefit to our participants and to our volunteer staff as well?
I think I would also add to that beyond esports, there's been some discussion about adding more traditional sports to the Champ Series list, if you will. And one thing that's been a theme the whole time we've talked today is quality, the experience, proper, staffing, safety, all of those things. So one of the things that often doesn't get talked about when we talk about, hey, should we add soccer? Should we do softball? Should we do some of these things? Is, do we have the bandwidth to handle it? We're a volunteer-driven organization. There are two full-time staff at NIRSA HQ that are certainly guiding us every day on what we're doing. And so we have to make sure that if we jump off into a new sport, that it's done correctly. We have the bandwidth to do it the way that we want to do it.
I think that's something incredibly important, is making sure that we're able to take care of our stuff on our own campuses, and then be able to take care of other things within NIRSA. We don't want to, as NIRSA, we want to make sure that there is the right infrastructure and set up to really do it the right way. Yeah, Scott, another point to share.
Yeah, and you had actually just touched on it. So we entertain any ideas in terms of what we could add to the NIRSA Championship Series. But like you had said, we're going to be purposeful in looking at it. And we're going to see if it's something that's sustainable. It's something that our participants and our stakeholders want. And we're going to make sure we do our due diligence in terms of, is this something that, if we put it in place, is going to occur not just once or twice, but down the line, and making sure that it's going to be able to be sustainable and also stay within our strategic values as well. So if anybody has any type of any ideas, please reach out to us, the executive committee, to one of the work team members, and we're happy to take a look at that and try and provide answers for those individuals.
Great. So just close out the show, I'd like to thank you all for your participation. Obviously, if folks haven't joined in mid-show or are looking to find out more information, head over to our YouTube Rec Chat channel, or check us out on Rec Chat on Twitter at Rec Chat. You can see various links to our previous broadcast, but also this one as well. So I'd like to thank you all from the Championship Series, as well as our support from NIRSA HQ in making this session a success today. Until next time, have a great rest of your week, a strong end of the semester, and we'll see you back for another Rec Chat session, either on Twitter or a Google broadcast coming up in 2019. So thank you all, and have a great day.